We may hear some more callouts that the engines are sufficiently chilled as we get a little closer to liftoff. And again, we are standing by for another fuel loading completion call in about 20 seconds.
And around this time, the second stage thrust vector control actuators are being tested and checked out. And this is when SpaceX moves the nozzle ever so slightly to make sure that guidance hardware is acceptable for flight. In about 2 minutes, at the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying some 260 miles off the southern coast of Australia, as we hear that Stage 2 LOX load is complete and Falcon 9 is now fully fueled. The first and second stages are now fully loaded with over 1 million pounds of rocket-grade kerosene. Is now Dragon moving into auto idle. Coming up on a minute and a half left in the countdown. Now auto idle puts the rocket in a state where the flight computers can understand before it takes off.
Now we are standing by for the T-minus 60-second callout that Falcon 9 has entered startup mode. At that point, the rocket's onboard flight computers will have taken over. From there on out, the countdown will be fully autonomous.
Falcon 9 has entered startup.
There's
Dragon is in countdown.
Confirmation of startup mode for Falcon 9 and countdown for Dragon. Our last milestone here is that our launch director calls go for liftoff.
LD, go for launch.
There we have it. Just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, the 9 Merlin 1D engines on the Falcon 9 first stage will ignite. Once they're at full power, Falcon 9 will lift off the pad and begin its climb to orbit.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Listen in for these final 30 seconds.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Dragon, and go CRS 34.
And liftoff. NASA's SpaceX 34th Commercial Resupply Services mission, carrying over 6,500 pounds of cargo and supplies, is on its way to the International Space Station.
Everything is looking good on board Falcon 9 and with our Dragon spacecraft. We heard those callouts from mission control that the rocket is pitching downrange and that all 9 Merlin
telemetry nominal
engines continue to perform well. We're just about to throttle down the engines to prepare for max Q, the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure during ascent. Max Q happens when the combination of speed
Falcon 9 is supersonic
and air pressure put the greatest stress on the vehicle. And with that call out from mission control, we know that Falcon 9 is moving faster than the speed of sound.
Max Q.
There's that call out for Max Q. Now coming up, there are going to be several major events that happen back to back really quickly. Main engine cutoff, stage separation, first stage flip, second engine start, and boost back burn start. Main engine cutoff will likely be called out as MECO. That's when all 9 engines on the first stage shut down. That'll be followed by stage
MVAC chill.
There's that call out for MVAC chill on board the second stage. Of course, before we can start the second stage, we do have to separate those 2 stages. The first and second stage will be separated and pushed apart from one another when we hear the call out for stage sep. Then the first stage will flip around using small thrusters so it can head back to Earth. A few seconds later, we'll light that second stage MVAC engine and continue pushing Dragon to orbit. After all of that is done, the first stage will perform its boost back burn to steer itself back toward the landing site.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
Great views on your screen there as you heard and hopefully saw all of those key events taking place. Main engine cutoff, stage separation, stage 1 flip, which is happening on the left-hand side of your screen, second engine start on the right-hand side of your screen, and the beginning of our boost back burn. Now, coming up shortly, we should hear the call out for completion of the boost back burn on the first stage. This burn helps to steer the booster back toward the landing site and is the first of 3 burns the first stage performs on its return to LZ-40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We are expecting that call out in just about 5 seconds.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
And once again, thank you for joining us as you continue to follow along with NASA's SpaceX 34th Commercial Resupply Services mission. Now 3 minutes and a little more than a half into today's flight. Takes about 9.5 minutes to get into orbit and all set as Dragon on the right-hand side with that Merlin MVAC engine on the right. Continuing its chase to the orbiting laboratory, and there you can see that stage 1 making its return back to Earth on the left-hand side. We had an on-time liftoff at 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time from Space Launch Complex 40 in Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Now, in order to make the left side, stage 1, make its return back to Earth, a couple things have to happen. 2 more burns to execute. The entry burn, where 3 of the Merlin engines will reignite, and this helps slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of Earth's atmosphere. And following the entry burn, the booster will go through its landing burn. And this is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land back on Earth. And we should be hearing those call outs for that entry burn in just a couple of moments from now.
That's right, Joseph. We are standing by for our entry burn, which we're expecting to begin at about T plus 6 minutes and 10 seconds. Now, during that entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but the vehicle is still moving really fast. This causes it to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, which are also known as the rocket's plume. That deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle's surface, which is why our flight-proven rockets look the way that they do. The soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses, and which, with each flight, that soot builds up a little more on the outside of the vehicle. We also heard that call out from Mission Control just a few moments ago that both vehicles are on nominal trajectories. You can follow the trajectories along at home in the bottom corners of your screen. We have stage 1 on the left and stage 2 on the right.
Now 5.5 minutes into flight. There's still a few more moments to go as we continue to follow along the path of NASA's SpaceX CRS 34th Commercial Resupply Services mission. And there you can see a great view of stage 1 on the left-hand side. The grid fins that Ronnie brought up earlier in the broadcast just ahead of launch. Falcon 9 is equipped with 4 hypersonic grid fins, which are positioned near the top of the first stage and are used for steering as it returns to Earth, as you heard the start of that entry burn for the first stage. And those grid fins are a critical part of Falcon 9's reusability system. So entry burn just completed as it's shut down. Now we'll look for that landing burn as it continues to make its return back to Earth, and it will begin its descent to landing zone 40 today. And on the right-hand side, continuing to track the path of the second stage, in which the Dragon cargo spacecraft on top of that second stage making its way into orbit. Now 6.5 minutes into today's flight. Now again, moments away from entry burn, we should see the stage 1 light back up as it will rapidly decelerate in preparation for landing at landing zone 40.
Stage 1 FTS safe.
And milestones continuing to check off for the stage 1 as it makes its return back to Earth. And we'll keep an ear out for that entry burn, startup and entry burn shutdown.
Stage 1 landing burn.
We should get some great visuals off the... So landing burn now underway, and that's the single engine that slows down stage 1 rapidly ahead of touching down back on Earth off the Florida coastline.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And great visualizations there as stage 1 has successfully returned back to landing zone 40. That's now 7.5 minutes into today's flight. We still have about a minute to go, a little less than that for stage
So there you
2.
saw,
And there you can
hopefully
follow
heard my
along the
colleagues
pathway.
behind
Stage
me.
1,
That is another
its journey has
successful
complete.
landing of our Falcon 9 rocket. This was the 6th launch and landing for this first stage. Now, coming up in just over 30 seconds, we should hear a call out for second engine cutoff 1, or SECO 1, which is when the MVAC engine on board the second stage shuts down. That'll conclude the roughly 6-minute burn by this engine needed to get Dragon into the proper orbit to align with the International Space Station.
Stage 2 FTS safe. Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Just about 10 seconds until we should hear that SECO 1 call.
MVAC shutdown.
And then there's confirmation of MVAC shutdown on board our second stage. Now we are just standing by for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
Stage 2 nominal orbit insertion.
And we have confirmation there of a good orbit from Mission Control. The Stage 2 vehicle is now in coasting with Dragon attached, and we're about a minute away from spacecraft separation. And we're seeing a great view of that second stage. That Merlin vacuum engine has shut down, and we'll continue to await that separation for Dragon to continue its journey on towards the International Space Station, again carrying 6,500 pounds of critical cargo, science, and supplies to the orbiting laboratory. And a great visual there on your left hand.
We're getting some great views up in space as Dragon is slowly drifting away from our second stage, which you've got that full view of the MVAC engine on your screen right now. And we have confirmed spacecraft
Dragon separation confirmed.
right on schedule. So to recap today's mission so far, we did have an on-time liftoff at 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Everything proceeded nominally up to that point. At 2.5 minutes into flight, we saw separation of the first and second stages right on schedule, which was followed by the successful landing of Falcon 9's first stage at Landing Zone 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. At about T plus 8 minutes and 30 seconds, we had a successful second engine cutoff, or SECO 1, which was followed by confirmation of good orbital insertion. Dragon then successfully separated from the second stage, and we are now standing by for nose cone deployment. I'll be handing back over to Joseph at JSC to talk us through that milestone. Joseph, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. Great to work with you and the team again as we see another successful launch and the cargo resupply services mission, the 34th for NASA and SpaceX, heading towards the orbiting lab. And as you mentioned, we are monitoring the nose cone deploy on the tip of the Dragon spacecraft. That'll hinge open. We just received note that the first set of hooks are opening up. We'll wait for the second set and then followed by the nose cone deploy. So once the nose cone is deployed, it'll expose the 4 forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that will execute a series of maneuvers necessary to raise Dragon's orbit and meet up with the International Space Station. And this will be immediately after Dragon separates from Falcon 9, which we just saw, and it begins with what we call now the activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. During this phase, Dragon is configured for on-orbit operations and begins after separation of Dragon from Falcon 9 and will end with the completion of the final co-elliptic burn, one of 5 key burns that the spacecraft will perform in order to catch up to the orbiting laboratory. Now, our initial orbit today for the spacecraft is 190 kilometers by 210 kilometers, and with those numbers, that represents the perigee and apogee of the orbit, or the lowest and highest point over the Earth, as we are now 11 minutes and 45 seconds into today's mission. Now, with that initial orbit, it means that it isn't a perfect circle around the Earth, but more like a very slight ellipse. And now, over the next several hours, in fact, looking at the phasing for Dragon to catch up to the International Space Station, about 37 hours, 1 day, 12 hours, and 54 minutes, give or take, to track down the orbiting lab, with, again, a docking scheduled for early Sunday morning. And that will be around 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Central Time. Now, I alluded to there are 5 major burns that the Dragon spacecraft or the firing of the Draco thrusters will perform to catch up to the International Space Station. And those burns are the phase burn, boost burn, close burn, transfer, and co-elliptic burn, which we mentioned earlier, that final. And that's all for Dragon to not only climb up to, but catch up to the International Space Station. And there you can see the pathway of where stage 1 and stage 2 took to get Dragon into its initial orbit today. Now approaching 13 minutes into today's mission. Now, if we can, let's transfer over to the mission control rooms as they are behind today's launch festivities. And you will see the teams both in Hawthorne and in Johnson Space Center.